Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking on what you could call one of the great animated tragedies of the modern era.
Yeah, it really is. We're talking about a show that seemed absolutely destined for greatness.
It had everything. A critical, darling, stunning, really cinematic animation and storytelling that was wrestling with some, genuinely high fantasy.
Political intrigue, mature character arcs, and yet, despite all that, it just vanished after a single brilliant season.
We are, of course, diving deep into the 2011 Thundercats.
And the sources you sent over, they give us this incredibly comprehensive look at the whole picture, the creative context, the narrative complexity.
And most importantly, the really complicated web of factors, both internal and external, that led to its abrupt, and I think we can say premature.
Absolutely.
So our mission today is to really try and uncover the full story. Why did this series, which was, I think, arguably Cartoon Network's best shot at competing in that prestige animation space, just fail to find an audience?
How does something so well made become a hidden gem?
Exactly, which is usually just code for great show that nobody watched.
Right. And to really get the ambition of the 2011 reboot, we first have to, establish the DNA of the original.
The 1985 series.
The 1985 series.
Yeah.
Which was, at its heart, a product of its time. I mean, like He-Man, the original Thundercats was fundamentally created for one reason.
To sell toys.
To sell toys. That was the whole game back then.
And that focus was total. The sources point out that some of the toy models for the original Thundercats line were actually just copied directly from existing He-Man designs.
Wow.
Yeah. The merchandise drove the story, not the other way around.
There's also that perennial fan debate.
Mm-hmm.
Was the original technically an anime?
Oh, right. The great debate.
It's a fascinating question because the whole story was written and developed by Americans, but the actual animation, that was all handled in Japan by the Pacific Animation Corporation.
And that's the same studio, interestingly, that did Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers before Disney brought them in-house.
Exactly. So it sits right at this weird intersection of, Western concept and Eastern execution.
And we absolutely have to clarify the core concept of the Thundercats themselves.
Yes.
Despite how they look, the mythology is very clear. They are not furries or just anthropomorphic animals. They're alien, refugees.
Right. They fled their doomed homeworld, Thundara, after it was destroyed. That's the core of the story.
Which really places the whole thing squarely in a science fiction. I mean, if you look at the deep-cut influence, the comparison is much closer to Superman's origin story.
It's the ultimate refugee narrative. Technologically superior beings escape this cataclysm, and they crash land on a less developed planet.
And that comparison isn't just a thematic thing either. It's literally baked into the development process.
Oh, how so?
Early design sketches for Lion-O reveal his original development name was Lion-L.
L, like Kal-El, Superman's Kryptonian name.
Exactly. It's a direct, deliberate reference. The creators were always thinking about big, mythic science fiction.
Okay, so with that deep sci-fi tradition in mind, let's jump forward. It's the late 2000s.
And Cartoon Network is facing a crisis, competition crisis.
Right. Nickelodeon had completely redefined animated storytelling with Avatar, The Last Airbender.
A mess.
It proved that Western audiences would absolutely embrace these long-form, serialized high fantasy stories.
And Avatar wasn't just a critical hit, it was a commercial juggernaut. And Cartoon Network knew Nickelodeon was about to launch the sequel, The Legend of Korra, in 2012.
So they needed a huge hit for 2011, something that could go head-to-head in that prestige animation space.
And this is where the stars, as they say, just perfectly aligned for the reboot.
We find out that an animator who actually worked on Avatar, Ethan Spaulding, he goes and pitches a Thundercats reboot to Cartoon Network.
And the key part of his pitch was that it would be in a similar animation style. He pitched the Avatar aesthetic.
So they got the look.
Yeah.
And then they brought in narrative firepower, Michael Gillon,
who was known for his work on DC properties, specifically the very witty and beloved Batman, The Brave and the Bold.
So you have this perfect combination. You have top-tier animation talent known for prestige work, and you have a genuine narrative nerd who knows how to adapt these legacy genre properties.
The intention from day one was just to raise the stakes completely.
The production team wanted to go grandiose. They wanted to shed that, cheesy Saturday morning vibe of the original.
They saw the core concept as having these genuinely cool ideas that just deserved a more mature, high fantasy treatment.
But they made some huge, really risky creative changes right out of the gate, especially with the main character, Lion-O.
Oh, this was the big one. The 80s Lion-O was famously a child's mind trapped in an adult's body. The whole Big or Shazam trope.
And the new version just threw that out completely.
The 2011 Lion-O was a young adult, a teenager. He was immature, arrogant, prone to bad decisions, but he was not a kid mentally.
And this was a very deliberate choice to make him more relatable to the 2011 target audience. It gave them a foundation for a real coming-of-age story.
But it was so controversial. I mean, the original fans, who were in their 30s and 40s at this point, they were genuinely...
They didn't want a nuanced character arc.
No, they wanted the powerful, commanding beefcake leader from the 80s. Clear trade-off. Maturity for...
They did throw a smart olive branch to those older fans, though.
Right, the voice actor.
Yeah. The original voice of Lion-O was brought back to voice King Claudius, Lion-O's father.
Which was a great touch, a real passing of the torch.
And then there's maybe the most universally celebrated change of all, Snarf.
In the original, he was this talking, sometimes pretty irritating side.
And in the 2011 reboot, they just made him a silent, cute little pet.
And this was so key because it removed all that unnecessary, often distracting comic relief and let the story stay focused on the high...
The world building they laid out in that first hour-long episode was just brilliant, intricate.
The setting is Third Earth, but the core conflict, thematics between technology and magic.
Technology is so forgotten that most people in the Cat Kingdom literally believe it's just a myth.
And we see the Sword of Omens, one of the most iconic weapons in animation, right away. And the sound design, when it extends, is just incredible.
It really is. And the energy it uses requires what the source material actually calls aura farming.
Aura farming. Explain that.
It's a great visual trope. When Lion-O taps into the sword's power, it's not just a glowing blade. The show visually depicts the power being drawn from the world around him, the earth, the wind, the sky.
So you see these vibrant energy trails flowing into the sword.
Exactly. It makes that connection between magic and the natural world feel tangible and, frankly, really cool to watch.
And to set up the immediate social conflict, they use the painful but very effective concept of species.
The ruling class is the cat, Thunderian. Below them, oppressed and enslaved, are the lizards or the scale.
This hierarchy creates the initial political tension that Lion-O, our immature hero, has to navigate.
And Lion-O, unlike his very conservative father, advocates for the scaly. This leads to this critical early scene where he basically gets a lecture on critical lizard theory.
It's not just a buzzword, though. The scene is about systemic oppression. He's forced to confront the history of prejudice and develop real empathy.
It shows he has the heart, even if he doesn't have the maturity yet.
But that empathy has a massive, devastating cost.
The Scalies launch a surprise attack on the Cat King, and the way it's framed is just pure high-stakes fantasy. It's described as a mix of a Helm's Deep-style siege and a Trojan horse-style betrayal.
And what do they use? Not magic, but the thing the cats thought was a myth. High technology, missiles, bombs, mechs.
And it just completely obliterates the cat, catches them totally off guard.
And tragically, it makes Lion-O look like a fool for having defended. This whole sequence forces him to realize the world isn't simple good versus...
And that his naivete has endangered everyone he loved.
This incredible opening then culminates in the reveal of the true big bad, Mum-Ra.
Right. And he's not some villain of the week. He's the ancient mastermind who has been manipulating this whole species conflict for millennia.
His goal is singular, the powerful stone inside the Sword of Omens, which he claims. This first hour just sets up so much.
After the world, the rivalry between Lion-O and Tigra, and a truly cinematic quest. And that foundational work is essential as we move into the core quest.
Unlike the original show, which starts after Thundara is already destroyed, this reboot shows us the fall,
which gives a much stronger emotional foundation for the characters and the plot moving forward.
The pacing was perfect. That first episode never felt rushed because every single second to either progress the plot, develop the characters, or deepen the world.
So the central mission becomes clear. It's a desperate race to find the Book of Omens.
Which is basically the second half of the Sword of Omens.
Exactly. They have to find it before Mum-Ra does.
Mm.
And Mum-Ra is immediately set up as this terrifyingly effective villain because he doesn't just send lackeys, he actively pursues his goals himself.
He proves that in this chilling way. He captures Jaga, the wise mentor, and traps his soul in a magic lamp,
turning him into a ghost slave forced to guide Mum-Ra to the book.
It just raises the stakes immediately. The quest becomes personal and incredibly...
And this is where the show really borrows the best parts of the Avatar formula. It uses external problems not just for action, but to force Lion-O's internal growth. Every encounter is a lesson.
We have a perfect example of this in the Plant People episode. The crew finds this race of tiny plant people who are having a birthing ceremony and a funeral at the same time.
Because their entire lifespan is only one day.
It's an incredibly poignant idea for a kids' show.
It is. Lion-O agrees to help one of them, Emmerich, get home. And you watch, minute by minute, as this character grows from a child to an adult and then rapidly ages toward death, all in one short journey.
And the moral of the story is aimed right at Lion-O's biggest flaw, his tendency to dwell on his own failure.
The episode teaches him that it doesn't matter how long or seemingly insignificant your life. What matters is how fully you live it. Emmerich knows he only has hours left, so he just focuses on his strengths to get home.
He reaches the end of his life just as they find the Brit, and he dies without regret. It teaches Lion-O to focus on the present.
To use his strengths and stop beating himself up over his immaturity. It's remarkably sophisticated emotional writing.
The series also did a great job with the core relationships, especially the rivalry between Lion-O and Tigra.
Right. In this version, they're adopted brothers. And Tigra has this huge chip on his shoulder.
He feels like Lion-O was just handed the sword, the chance to be king, while he had to work for everything he ever got.
And Mumru uses this. He follows them into the spirit realm and uses psychological warfare to try and drive a permanent wedge between them.
Their conflict comes to a head, forcing them to confront where all this tension comes.
And the breakthrough moment is all about a shared childhood memory. Tigra realizes he's been competing with Lion-O his whole life, but the memory that finally connects them is one where Tigra, despite being the one in trouble, took the blame. He showed integrity.
It forces a reconciliation that's based on mutual respect, not just, being brothers. They acknowledge their shared struggle.
We also get fantastic development for Chitara. Her flashback episode is a masterpiece of character-driven storytelling.
And it highlights how well the writers plan things out long term.
It's all about her quest to join the clerics.
And Chitara, being naturally super fast, tries to just rush through the obstacle course required for entry, but she fails.
Jaga tells her explicitly that her greatest asset, her speed, is useless without patience.
So she proves herself through this extreme act of dedication. She just waits outside the building for days, starving, until Jaga finally gives in and accepts her.
The lesson is so clear. True skill needs mental fortitude, not just raw ability.
But here's the brilliant part of the writing. This patience training isn't just a random backstory.
It's not.
It validates an action we, the audience, had already seen her perform earlier in the season.
In a previous episode, her training is what allows her to get through this complex, trap-filled tunnel when they're looking for the Book of Omens.
That kind of internal consistency where a flashback later explains a past success is so rare. It shows the writers had a long-term plan for her character.
And that attention to detail is what made that first half of the season feel so promised. But as we move into the middle and latter half, the sources say the momentum started to falter.
Yeah, there was a noticeable shift. The show started losing its serialized appeal because of a pivot toward what the production team called one-off episodes.
Episodes designed for syndication. You can air them in any order.
Exactly. Which meant they couldn't rely on the audience remembering ongoing character conflict.
So they just started ignoring the brilliant dynamics they had set up. The whole complex relationship between Lion-O and Tigra just stagnated. They stopped bickering.
Lion-O stopped actively trying to be a better king.
And Chitara, despite being this strong, skilled cleric, she got almost no new development. She was just there for exposition or action scenes.
She even seemed to just brush off Jaga's death because the next episode had to be a standalone adventure.
The wily kids, Wily Kid and Wily Cat, they became mostly just comic relief. Their dynamic was only used when the main plot needed a quick push forward.
And this stagnation also led to a big shift in the central conflict. Since the Sword of Omens had already chosen Lion-O, the whole who deserves to be king thing was kind of resolved.
So the tension devolved into a competition.
Yep. The source material says this became the main source of their arguments. It went from political succession to a love triangle.
Tigra even says something like Chitara is just one more thing Lion-O doesn't deserve, linking his resentment over the sword directly to his jealousy.
And that tension comes to a really painful head. Chitara chooses her,
which just crushes Lion-O's already fragile ego.
And to make it worse, she then reveals that she was only following him in the first place because Jaga asked her to.
Ouch. So it wasn't even her choice.
It just compounds his feeling of inadequacy and betrayal. He becomes a massive jerk to everyone for a while.
But this moment of failure is what sets up his final necessary maturation.
He gets sucked into a spirit realm for a series of trials. And these aren't trials to teach him new magic or kung fu.
They're all about maturity. He's forced to learn to listen to his friend, to seek simpler solutions instead of just charging in alone.
It's what we're calling an introspective maturity arc. It's such a smart twist on the typical shonen trope.
Right. Usually in shonen, the trial gives the hero a new power level.
Here, the trial gives him emotional intelligence. It's a choice to prioritize internal growth over an external power-up.
And his final trial shows he's learned the lesson. After Tigra helps him confront his own lack of self-faith, Lion-O chooses to wager his soul until sunrise to save his friends.
It's true sacrifice. He combines courage with teamwork and circumvention to complete his character arc. He finally becomes a real leader.
So before we get to the explosive finale, we have to talk about the incredible world building around around the Power Stones.
Oh, this huge revelation about the true past of Thundara.
The flashbacks show us that Thundara's past wasn't this magical fantasy kingdom. It was a futuristic sci-fi empire. Think Star Wars or Battlestar Galactica.
The magic of the present is just the decayed technology past.
And the source material reveals that Lion-O's own grandfather worked for Mumra, conquering planets using intergalactic warfare.
So the whole conflict is rooted in this ancient...
And Mumra's own ancient weapon, the Sword of Plunder, is discovered by Tigra and Chitara in an old slave colony.
The lore behind the sword is magnificent.
It really highlights the scale of Mumra's evil. The blade was forged from a metal created by compressing an entire galaxy into a single substance.
Now, okay, we could spend an hour on the physics of how that would create a black hole.
Right, but the narrative purpose is clear. It shows Mumra's power is on a cosmic scale. He's an enemy of the universe.
We also learn more about Mumra's nature. The show kind of plays into those fun conspiracy theories about aliens building the pyramids.
He's the mummy in a world of cat, and the show reveals he's an ancient alien himself, which gives this kind of cheeky but grounded explanation for his whole Egyptian aesthetic.
We also find out his major weakness is sunlight. He's basically a vampire always having...
Which, to be fair, is sometimes used as a bit of a narrative convenience to get the villain off.
True, but he does learn to inhabit the body massive rock-type survive.
Okay, so the final confrontation that ends, Lion-O gets a new girlfriend, Palmera.
And she seems key to finding the final power stone, which is keeping this massive floating city air.
And this is where the big betrayal, the one Jaga warned, finally.
Palmyra is revealed to be a mole. She actually died during the fall of Thundara.
Mumra resurrected her soul, convincing her to join him because she felt her King Lion-O had failed.
This twist is huge, especially for fans of the 80s show where Palmyra will thunder.
The sources say this was purely for narrative drama, to give Lion-O one last crushing personal failure right before the climax.
She declares Mumra her master. It's a dark moment.
And the final battle is just catastrophic. Mumra takes the stone, and the whole city starts to...
It's a classic apocalyptic scenario. And this is where the unsung heroes, the wily kids, finally get their moment.
Key plot point here is their bag of holding, a direct loan from Dungeons & Dragons. They use it to travel back to the surface and gather everyone the Thundercats had helped all season.
So they return with this mini army of reinforcements. It's the ultimate thematic payoff.
They overpower Mumra, not with superior strength, but with unity, with friendship and mercy.
We also get a great moment for Panthro. He'd lost his arms early.
And now he returns as this powerful cyborg, using his mechanical arms to safely land the falling city, a great end to his own physical struggle.
So Lion-O, having completed his maturity arc, finally unites some of the species under his... But Mumra escaped war.
And the season ends on this massive, tantalizing cliffhanger, promising so much more to come.
Which brings us to the tragedy. Despite all this, the series ends right there.
So we have to analyze the incredibly complex factors at play, which were largely financial and external, not creative.
Let's start with the common misconception about merchandise. Many people assume the toys just didn't sell.
Which is often the death knell for these shows. But it's not quite that simple. Cartoon Network bet heavily on this being their cash cow.
They invested in every possible huge playsets, action figures in multiple scales, the Thunder Tank, a replica Sword of Omens. The investment was massive.
And the sales reports are conflicting. Some say they were bad, some say they were okay. But merchandising failure wasn't the single thing that killed the show.
The problem was fundamentally financial. Cartoon Network was in a really rocky place in the early 2010s.
They were pivoting hard toward maximizing profit margin, which meant cheaper to produce shows.
Live action segment, low-cost comedic animation. Those have faster turnarounds and lower labor costs.
And Thundercats was the exact opposite of that. It required Avatar-level animation quality. That meant huge budgets, large teams, long production timelines.
The network was already struggling to justify the expense, even with the critical acclaim.
And then an external catastrophe happened that just made the cost problem so much worse.
The massive 9.0 earthquake in Fukushima in March 2011, and the nuclear disaster that followed.
This event just rocked the global animation industry. The show's main animation studio, Studio 4C, was in Tokyo.
So the crisis led to massive logistical disruptions, infrastructure damage, and an immediate significant spike in the cost of labor production across.
So you have Cartoon Network's existing financial fragility combined with his astronomical spike in production costs. The show just became financially unviable.
They couldn't support a show this expensive anymore, especially one that wasn't a guaranteed Avatar-level culture. The disaster was a huge factor.
And beyond the cost, there were issues with audience.
Right. One theory is that younger kids just found it harder to identify with the 2011 Lion-O. He was a young adult. The main cast of Avatar.
The original 80s Lion-O, being a child in an adult's body, had a built-in relatability for kids that this more mature version just lacked.
And this was compounded by resistance from the older fans. Many original fans didn't like the changes.
They wanted their childhood back.
Yep.
Even if the new story was objectively better, nostalgia's a powerful thing. Many just stopped watching.
And finally, you have Cartoon Network's own unfortunate history of self-sabotage.
Which is rampant at the time.
The airtime for Thundercats was constantly shifted, from weekend mornings to late nights, then back. It made the show functionally impossible to find for anyone trying to follow.
And this scheduling chaos was happening right as streaming services were becoming mainstream. Even established hits were struggling. Thundercats, fighting bad schedules, high costs, and a natural disaster just never stood a chance.
The series was tragically left as a true hidden gem. Brilliant, but cut off at the knee. And what happened after? CN still owned the IP.
Years later, they tried again. They launched Thundercats Roar, a comedic, highly stylized reboot, clearly trying to copy the success of Teen Titans Go. Low-cost animation, all humor.
The reception was not good.
No. The consensus was it was a show nobody asked for. It just highlighted the network's continuing trend toward budget-driven decisions.
So given the current landscape, the chances of getting another high-quality serialized drama like the 2011 series are pretty slim.
The only realistic way to fund a show that ambitious today would be through a massive streaming service with deep pocket, a Netflix or an HBO Max, or maybe a huge crowdfunding campaign like we saw with Vox Machina.
So we've completed our deep dive, a show praised for its superior world building, its high fantasy complexity, and its mature character arc, especially Lion-O's spiritual trial.
And yet it was simultaneously doomed by crippling production costs, the Fukushima catastrophe, and just awful network scheduling.
It's a vital case study in ambition versus budget. For those of you who missed it, we really strongly encourage you to revisit the 2011 series.
The powerful cinematic start, the introspective episodes like The Plant People 1 and the final moments of character growth, they really showcase the best of what Western animation was capable of at that time.
And here is the final thought we'll leave you with, building on that incredible ancient lore. We talked about Mum-Ra's terrifying power, forging the sword of plunder by compressing an entire galaxy.
We also know that the Birdman warned Lion-O that the power of the stones themselves was ultimately the source of all the systemic inequality on Third Earth.
So, considering the full scope of that revelation, that both the Thundercats and Mum-Ra are destructive aliens, and their past was defined by dangerous technology fueled by these power sources, have to ask.
Did Lion-O, in his final act of unification, really make the right long-term choice by bringing the species together under a rule enabled by those very power stones?
Or should the power have been sealed away entirely, maybe even destroyed, to ensure that the cycle of conflict and inequality they created was permanently broken?
That is the ultimate philosophical question for a second season that we unfortunately never got to see answered.